This is CBN NewsWatch.
Thanks for joining us for CBN NewsWatch. I'm Gary Lane. Today is Wednesday, December 17th, and we begin this half hour with news from the Middle East. Syrian and Palestinian Authority passport holders will not be able to enter the U.S. as of the beginning of the year, the latest in a series of bans. Meanwhile, Israel is adamant that the world must wake up and fight anti-Semitism against the backdrop of the attack in Australia. CBN Middle East correspondent Julie Stahl has more on our top story from Jerusalem.
The ban bars Palestinian Authority and Syrian passport holders from entering the United States for travel or immigration starting January 1st. The presidential decree, first declared in June on 19 countries, has now been expanded to include 27. U.S. officials say the countries in question and the Palestinian Authority cannot meet basic criteria for identifying their nationals and residents who pose national security and public safety threats and for sharing information with the United States. Against the backdrop of the Hanukkah massacre in Australia, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu called on world leaders to take action against anti-Semitism.
I demand that Western governments do what is necessary to combat anti-Semitism and provide the necessary security and safety for Jewish communities around the world. And they should heed our warnings. I demand that they act now.
At a White House Hanukkah celebration, President Trump paid tribute to the victims of the Australia attack and warned of an increasingly anti-Semitic Congress.
If you go back 10, 12, 15 years ago at the most, the strongest lobby in Washington was the Jewish lobby. It was Israel. That's no longer true. You have to be very careful. You have a Congress in particular which is becoming anti-Semitic.
In an interview with Newsmax, Pennsylvania Senator John Fetterman said he's been incredibly disappointed with his own Democratic Party.
People are trying to pretend these kinds of words and terms like, from the river to the sea, or to globalize the intifada and all those other things. We all know what this means, and I refuse to pander to that. And for me, it's been a rot, within the American left and within my party.
Julie Stahl, CBN News, Jerusalem.
President Trump is ramping up the pressure on Venezuela. He's declared the Maduro regime a foreign terrorist organization and ordered a blockade of all sanctioned oil tankers. This as the White House defends Chief of Staff Susie Wiles for her candid comments about some administration officials, including the president. Brody Carter reports.
President Trump is ramping up pressure on Venezuela, this morning announcing in a Truth Social post he's blockading all sanctioned oil tankers going in and out of the country. The latest move comes after the U.S. seized a Venezuelan tanker suspected of shipping oil to Iran last week. Observers say the blockade could cripple Venezuela's economy. In a statement, Venezuela's government calling it a reckless and serious threat. Leader Nicolas Maduro is calling for peace, but pledged to defend his country. The administration has mostly targeted drug smuggling boats in the region. In an interview with Vanity Fair, White House Chief of Staff Susie Wiles said the president, quote, wants to keep on blowing boats up until Maduro cries uncle. Her interview with comments about the president and other top aides is unusual for such a high-placed official whose role is typically behind the scenes.
Susie likes to stay sort of in the back, let me tell you. The ice maiden, we call her the ice maiden.
The controversy stems from candid remarks by Wiles about the first year of President Trump's second term. She's quoted comparing the president's personality to that of an alcoholic, saying he believes, quote, that there's nothing he can't do. Nothing. Zero. Nothing. Some of the strongest criticism is aimed at Attorney General Pam Bondi, saying she, quote, totally whiffed demands to release the Epstein files. She also criticized Elon Musk's dismantling of USAID and described Vice President J.D. Vance as a long-held conspiracy theorist. Wiles and the White House have rejected the article's framing.
This is, unfortunately, another example of disingenuous reporting, where you have a reporter who took the Chief of Staff's words wildly out of context, did not include the context those conversations were had within. I think the most egregious part of this article was the bias of omission that was clearly present.
When asked about the report, President Trump defended Wiles, saying, quote, I didn't read it. I don't read Vanity Fair, but she's done a fantastic job. He also admitted that while he does not drink alcohol, quote, "I've often said that if I did, I'd have a very good chance of being an alcoholic. It's a very possessive personality." The fallout from the profile comes as the president prepares to address the nation in a rare primetime Oval Office speech tonight. The White House says he'll highlight his accomplishments and outline next year's priorities. Brody Carter, CBN News.
Now to the latest on the Brown University shooting. Police are combing through hundreds of tips in their search for the killer. Tuesday evening, hundreds gathered for a vigil at Brown University for the 2 students killed and 9 injured. Police released these new images of a person of interest. They say he may have been near the scene of the shooting earlier that day. He's described as 5'8" with a stocky build. A famous song describes the Christmas season as the most wonderful time of the year. However, for many among us, it's just the opposite. The holidays can be the most painful time of the year for people who are grieving the loss of a loved one. Lori Johnson tells us about ways to cope.
A survey conducted by the American Psychiatric Association last year found nearly half of all adults said grieving a loss or missing a loved one was one of the top stressors during the holidays. We often feel the pain most acutely during the first Christmas without a loved one. However, even if the person has been gone longer than that, it can still hurt doing things we used to enjoy with them.
A lot of times you might not even feel like celebrating, but everybody else around you is, and you don't want to feel like you're discouraging other people. You don't want to feel like a Debbie Downer, so to speak. And so the holidays can be very, very confusing.
That's why the church-based program Grief Share released the book Survival Guide, Navigating the Holidays After Loss.
And it's really important to figure out, okay, how am I going to approach these holidays differently? And how am I going to do it in a way that I can actually survive?
One way is by creating a plan for get-togethers.
That can be something as simple as having a buddy to go with you who can take you and you can leave at a certain time without having to stay the whole time. Or you can let people know ahead of time, yeah, I'm coming for Thanksgiving, but I'm only going to stay for an hour. Or you can let people know, I may or not show up that day. I'll have to let you know the day of.
Honoring those who passed also helps manage the grief.
Talking with other family members to say, you know, this evening we're going to light a candle and talk about Uncle Mitch, or we're going to say a prayer and say just how thankful we are for Cousin Barbara.
Another option involves creating new traditions.
And I remember we talked to a person who went on a cruise to do something different during the holidays as opposed to celebrating at home. But you can get really, really creative.
In addition to the book, Grief Share also oversees holiday grief support group meetings in churches nationwide.
When you go to griefshare.org, you can find out how to find a group, join a group, or you can find out how to get a group started in your church.
Finally, if you know someone who's grieving this Christmas, experts recommend letting them know you care.
Sometimes you don't know what you should say, and sometimes you don't have to say anything. It's just so much better for you just to be present and sit with people.
So while the holidays can be painful for those experiencing grief, there are ways to get by and even find joy. Lori Johnson, CBN News.
Coming up, a Ukrainian soldier who lost both his legs after getting hit by a Russian mortar. Watch as he takes his first steps since the attack and meet the team who made it possible. Stay with us. You're watching CBN NewsWatch. Wounded warriors who gave everything for their country and refused to give up on life. Some 50,000 Ukrainians have lost their limbs in battle since 2022. Today, they're walking, working, and back to serving their nation. George Thomas has their inspiring stories from Kyiv.
For 23-year-old Ukrainian soldier Vladislav Chup, the journey back to life began with love.
The first thing I thought about was Diana, because if something happens to me, I didn't know how she would live through it.
March 9th, 2024. It's roughly 9 in the evening. Vlad and a fellow soldier are serving in Bakhmut, eastern Ukraine, when suddenly the Russians launch a 82mm mortar at their position.
It exploded in front of me. I fell back. There was a sharp pain below my waist. I looked down and understood the extent of my injuries.
And in the process, Vlad loses both his legs.
It's a miracle he's alive. When the mortar exploded, the shrapnel scattered all over the ground and only hit his legs and didn't hit his torso or his head.
His future looked uncertain, but Diana never wavered. She visited him in the hospital each day, fed him, cared for him, prayed over him.
He's the love of my life, and I cannot imagine my life without him. If had to choose between two evils, it's better him being alive and losing both limbs than him dead, and I'm left without him.
By May, they were married. After months of grueling rehab, Vlad took his first steps on prosthetic legs.
It was not my time to die. I still have a mission that I need to fulfill in this world.
All made possible by Protest Foundation, a Ukrainian Christian-led organization co-founded by Yura Arozhetse.
Dr. Yakov, my co-founder, and I are believers who share Christian values. When the war began, we sought ways to help, and we felt God place it on our hearts to serve by providing prostheses.
Since 2022, the foundation has helped more than 1,000 Ukrainian service members regain mobility. Inside the Protest Foundation's facility, Medical Director Ilya Ivanets guides us through the complex stages of crafting a prosthesis, from molding to fitting to the training every patient must undergo.
The main objective of our center is to help patients transition from lying in bed or using a wheelchair to using a prosthesis as quickly as possible so they can regain independence and feel a renewed sense of dignity.
Each story, while devastating, also inspiring, such as 27-year-old Ukrainian soldier Rudyakov Stanislav.
I started to set up the electric detonator and engage the munitions.
On November 5th, 2024, in Ukraine's Sumy region, near the Russian border, while preparing to launch a drone, he came under fire.
The blast wave triggered the FPV drone and it exploded.
The explosion took both of his eyes and his hand.
It was psychologically difficult, and then I realized that I needed to move on and keep going because life doesn't end.
At Protest, Stanislav is learning to rebuild his world, literally by touch. A mechanical arm is being fitted for him, and specialists are training him to navigate life without sight. The foundation's mission extends beyond service members. In Ukraine's Kherson region, 15-year-old Victoria Zanitsprana lost her arm when a missile struck her home. Now, thanks to Protest, she's learning to lift objects with her new robotic arm. A small movement that means the world to her and her family. Non-profit groups like Protest estimates that close to about 50,000 Ukrainians have lost limbs since Russia's invasion of this country back in 2022. And what they are doing here is absolutely essential, giving men like this gentleman a chance at a new life.
These are push-ups that strengthen his muscles so he can support himself when standing up. It's easier for him because he used to play sports and train regularly, so physical exercises come more naturally to him.
Occupational therapist Bonda Rostislav is preparing Denis Ivashenko for his trip to the United States, where he'll receive custom-made prosthetics due to the severity of his injuries. Ivashenko survived a direct Russian mortar strike in August while serving in the Sumy region. The shell landed in his trench. The soldier beside him died instantly. Like all recipients, Ivashenko's travel and prosthetics are fully covered by the foundation. Once he returns, he says God is calling him to serve others who've been wounded in battle.
God wants me to minister to people who have gone through similar difficult situations in their lives and to be someone who can support them.
And today, Vladislav is not just walking again, he's back in the fight, conducting covert missions deep inside Russian-occupied territory.
The war hasn't ended yet, so we need to keep fighting. And that's the highest motivation to continue living and to do everything possible to bring peace back to Ukraine.
For Diana, the relief and gratitude are immeasurable. thankful that despite everything, her beloved survived.
At first, I was asking why he lost his legs, but later I realized it's a blessing that it's only his legs. Legs are just a means of getting around. Thankfully, he still has his arms, he can feel, his eyesight is intact, and he will eventually be able to see our children and hear their voices. I'm truly thankful to God for that.
George Thomas, CBN News, Kyiv, Ukraine.
Still ahead, producer and songwriter Brunes Charles joins us for a sit-down interview about his life and music career. Stay with us. You're watching CBN NewsWatch. Welcome back to CBN NewsWatch. Brunes Charles is already an award-winning artist, and the musician, singer, and songwriter is nominated for more awards, including a Grammy nomination for Best Gospel Performance Song for his writing on church, featuring Tasha Cobbs Leonard and John Legend. Ephraim Graham sat down with him for more on his music career.
Where is the choir? I can't hear them singing. Where is the preacher? I can't hear him preaching.
Sitting here on the heels of a Grammy nomination.
Who would have known? I don't consider myself a writer.
Where is that feeling?
I had the music side, the producing side, but in terms of like writing a song, I never saw myself as writing a song. And so one day I just decided to own it. I was like, hey, I may not be able to write like you guys, but I can paint a story and I can give different concepts. And I think by doing it more, I eventually got better. And now I'm nominated for the first time ever as a writer, writing a song that Tasha Cobbs and John Legend is on.
Now I'm understanding you're more than a building when the service is over.
I literally could cry just sitting back thinking of how far God has brought me. And I listen to John Legend all the time on the radio, and I'd play his songs on the piano. And I'm talking to you and I'm like, I wrote a song that he is singing.
You'll meet me right here, and God, I'll be waiting. Oh, what a feeling.
I love what you posted when you got word of the Grammy. You said, yesterday I found out I'm nominated for a Grammy as a songwriter. I never saw myself as that, but God did. Every insecurity, every moment of doubt, he still covered me. I used to find excuses not to show up because I didn't feel qualified. But grace has a way of qualifying you for what you thought was beyond you. To whoever needs it, walk in the room and let God be God.
Yes, sir.
Is that a hard lesson for you to learn?
Ooh, it was a hard lesson for me to learn because I would say not up until a couple of years ago, I would walk in the room that God would place me in and try to do it myself. The more I surrendered to God, it gave me a better picture of why am I in these rooms? And what's the assignment in these rooms when I walk in? Is it to come up with the most words? Or is it to just be who I'm supposed to be and let God just shine through me in that? And once I figured that part out, everything else became easier. Like we would come in the rooms and we would just be like, hey, what are you going through today? And that would birth a song, you know? And just like church, we walked into the room and I was just like, man, how's everybody feeling? And from that conversation, the idea of church was birthed.
God, it's just you and me now. Tell me what to do now. Teach me how to have church on a Monday.
Any lines stand out for you?
Teach us how to have church on a Monday. Because church is easy on Sunday.
Yeah.
It is. And the hardest day is Monday when everything goes back. You got to worry about work, life, kids, environment, the world. I think church has a way of, it's almost an escape from reality. Once you leave those four walls, it's a different story, and you got responsibilities and other things that you have to answer to. And so we were asking for the same grace that we find and same peace that we find on Sunday. Like, how do we find that on Monday? Church is really good on Sunday, but what about Monday? What about Tuesday? What about Wednesday, when you got to go through the week? And that's the line for me. Teach us how to have church on the hardest day, not when it's easy.
Teach us how to have church.
You can listen to Church featuring Tasha Cobbs Leonard and John Legend wherever you stream your music. And join us tonight for an all-new edition of Studio 5. We sit down with Jen Lilly. The actress and author is talking about her new devotional called Wake Up Your Faith. You can see Studio 5 on the CBN News channel at 8 o'clock Eastern. You can also watch it on the CBN News app or on YouTube. And Studio 5 has a podcast. It's called Conversations from Studio 5. It's your weekly destination for uplifting interviews with a strong focus on faith. This week, Ephraim is talking more in depth with Jen Lilly. She expands more on her devotional and dives into her own personal testimonies. You can listen to the episode on your favorite podcast platform. Stay with us. We'll have more CBN NewsWatch right after this. Arts and crafts retailer Hobby Lobby is giving away 500,000 copies of the book, The Case for Christmas. The book's author, Lee Strobel, made the announcement on social media last week. The Case for Christmas looks at historical evidence, along with biblical accounts and research, examining the identity of Jesus and the Christmas story. Strobel was an atheist most of his life before coming to know Jesus Christ as his Lord and Savior. Hobby Lobby will continue to distribute the book while supplies last. Well, that's it for this edition of CBN NewsWatch. Remember, you can find more of our news programs on the CBN News channel anytime or online with cbnnews.com. Also, tell us about the stories you've seen and email us at newswatch@cbn.com. Or talk to us on Facebook, Instagram, and X, formerly known as Twitter. We hope you'll join us next time. Have a great day.